Ladies and gentlemen, the following is a Thorpe TV production, produced by Jack Thorpe. Live from near the Canadian border, we are bringing to you the SOCS Show, starring MrHolster.
Howdy, pards! It's time for the SOCS Show, Scott's other coffee show. And tonight we have Sazerac I'll try it again. Sazerac Rye, straight rye whiskey. 45% by volume, 90 proof. This is my favorite rye whiskey, by the way. If you're going to start sending me bottles, this is the one to buy. I'll just put a little in the glass because we want to keep our heads straight here. Well, there's a first time for everything. Did you want to sniff? You want to try it? Try it out. Good stuff, huh? Yeah. It's got a little vanilla, caramely vanilla smell to it, which is kind of odd for rye, but good stuff. Like it. So, let's... what was it we said the one day? It was to the sunny slopes of long, long ago. And that was said by Robert Duvall in Lonesome Dove. And it was also said by, it wasn't Tommy Lee Jones in the second version of that, The Return of Lonesome Dove. It was John Voight said that in that movie. Oh yeah, that does warm you up. It's not that cold here though. Don't need warming up. Plenty warm in the tack room today. We've had a warm streak. It's been hovering right around thawing out. The snow's almost gone. And I was going through around Facebook this week. They've got this annoying thing that pops up what you posted 2 years ago. Like, I want to repost that. But at any rate, I did repost it. Because it was a picture of Pecos Penny, my horse. And she did not look happy. And that was because it had been negative 25 that week for quite a while. And that day it was a warm one at negative 14. Hey, great. Yeah, and so it's been hovering around 30 degrees here all week long. Quite a contrast to 2 years ago. I'll tell you that much. And it's going to be in early spring, because I think I could go out there and dig a post hole right now. I don't even think the ground froze up much. I don't think it's frozen much more than a foot into the ground. And I remember that year it froze 7 feet down. It took out my hydrant out there by the horses. Froze it solid down, all the way down to the ground. It wasn't the hydrant that was frozen, it was the pipe below it. So I remember that. It was not a pleasant winter at all that winter. So, but we'll move on here. Now today, the actor in our contest is Tom Selleck. Yeah, Magnum PI, Tom Selleck, or now he plays Police Commissioner Reagan. Police Commissioner Reagan, and that's pretty good. I know that, and I don't even have any television reception whatsoever here. Nothing. Zero. We get nothing. Nothing. If I can't get it on the internet, we don't got it. So much for that. Any rate, yeah, that's the actor in our contest, and we had Buffalo got the first two right, so he's scored 2, and it's whoever has the most scores by the end, which now we only have. Today will be our 4th, so after this it'll be 2 more times, and then we'll see who the winner of this beautiful, beautiful sage green Ruger hat is. Provided to us by Ruger, the United States manufacturer of fine firearms. Made here in the USA. You can't beat that, guys. Great product, great company. So at any rate, Buffalo's won twice. He's got 2 under his belt. PR Veteran got the last one. He's got 1. We got 3 left. Today's clue is the actor that said the line was Tom Selleck. And what you have to do is you have to identify the line when I use it in the program today, and the movie it came from, and post it down below. And the first one to post it, Tom Selleck, blah, 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 movie, yada, da, da. They win. They win. And if you win enough, you win the hat. And if not, you at least have the bragging rights of getting one of them, if nothing else, or 2. It depends. We shall see. And since this is Scott's other coffee show, next time we have a contest, it's just going to be for that exact show, because, you know, it gets hard for me to keep track here. It's too much for me to handle. So anyway, I was thinking today, about my dad a lot this week. But in the last 24 hours or so, I've been thinking about, and this is part of my wife bringing up one of my uncles, and I was talking about her this morning, and this is not the uncle I'm thinking about, but I've been thinking about my other uncle who was from Michigan. I've been thinking about him since she brought that up. And Uncle Charlie was like, when I was a kid, to me, Uncle Charlie was like, he was a man's man. He was like the greatest guy in the world, right? I just thought Uncle Charlie was the greatest. In fact, the first cigar I ever smoked, I was like 8 years old when he let me have a puff of his cigar. But at any rate, I remember one time we used to go to Michigan for 2 weeks every year, and we'd drive that through Wisconsin, Upper Peninsula, down across the Mackinac Bridge, like I did that, down across the Mackinac Bridge, and they lived in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And my grandparents lived in Bay City, Michigan. So we'd make the rounds. We'd stay with Grandma and Grandpa, and we'd stay with Uncle Charlie in Virginia, and we'd spend time at Grandma and Grandpa's cabin on Clear Lake, this little tiny spring-fed lake in the center of Michigan that was like 6 feet deep because Grandpa was... It's because Grandpa was scared to death of the water, couldn't swim. And I think I talked about this before. And I'm pretty sure I did in some video somewhere. Anyway, so they got this, and it was a beautiful, beautiful cabin built like 1910. It was just this gorgeous cabin. Huge, huge fireplace with the big field stones, and just a great, great cabin. We used to spend and Uncle Charlie and Aunt Virginia and their kids, everybody'd come up. We'd all spend time at the cabin usually, and these are great memories from my youth. So I was thinking about Uncle Charlie because my wife had instigated this morning. And I remember this one time, middle of the summer, and I'm sure the statute of limitations is run. We're sitting there at the dining table at lunchtime, and big dining table. This is how I recall it. Now, now I'm trying to think. It's hard to remember the layout of the house. But yeah. So we're sitting there and eating lunch, and you see him light up. Well, I look out, and out the sliding glass door, here's this big buck, just standing pretty as can be. And this was a walkout. with a little deck sliding glass door up above. And you see him, he goes, "Excuse me." And he had this, he was a contractor, and he had built this house, and he had built this fireplace. Let me put it over here, fireplace. Then behind the fireplace was the master bedroom. And in between, he left like a 3-foot gap when he built the house between the back of the fireplace and the master bedroom. And he put a closet on the end of it with a shelf deal in there that would open like a door, would turn, and he had his gun room in there behind the fireplace. So he goes back through that door, comes back out with this rifle, and opens the sliding glass door. And you hear this bang. And he comes back up and says, "Scott, come give me a hand for a second." And we drag this buck into the basement, and he cleans and dresses the buck in the basement. Now, before you say anything, this was a long time ago. We're talking 40 years plus. So, I don't even want to hear about it. It was, to me, it's a great memory, and it's a great story. So I'll just leave it at that. But he was a really unique guy. He used to go, they had a place in Florida, and he used to he'd put, venison and meat and whatever in the back of a freezer, a little chest freezer, on a trailer behind his pickup truck. And he had a camper on it. And he'd drive to his place in Florida, and he'd have all the food, all the meat they needed while they were down there for the winter. And then when he came back, and you're asking, how could he do that? And, well, we'll get to that. And when he came back, he'd go down to Stock Island, down the Keys, and he'd wait till a shrimp boat came in, and he'd buy just a ton load of shrimp. He'd fill up that cooler, that freezer, chest freezer. He'd fill that chest freezer up with shrimp. Just fill it with shrimp. And then he'd drive back. He'd do that the morning they left, and they'd drive back. And he'd stop at motels during the night, and he'd unplug their pop machine and plug his cooler in. And then when he got back to Michigan, he'd sell the shrimp out in front of his car washing place. And, just true American spirit and entrepreneur back then, which nowadays, you can't do anything. God forbid you do anything that they don't have their hand in the till. But just a great guy. And I think part of the reason I liked him, he was a big gun guy. He was a big gun guy. And my dad, not so much, because my dad was, and I talked about this, in demolition during the war and everything. And I think he kind of just, when the war was over and that was done, he kind of just, which is another great story too. One day, well, I don't know if I want to tell that story right in the moment. We'll let that go. We'll just stop with Uncle Charlie. But, yeah, he was a great guy. Man's man kind of guy. And always kind of maybe skirting things a little bit, but, as they say in that movie, I'm going to throw you off here. In John Doe, everybody's got a little streak of larceny in them. And that's what makes America. Everybody's got a little bit of streak and larceny in them. They can't pass a telephone booth without sticking their finger in the slot to see if somebody left a quarter. But anyway, so just gonna put a little more in, just a little, not much, honest, just a touch. See, just a touch. So anyway. Oh yeah, that helps. And that's what I said to her that one night. I didn't say I didn't know how to use it. I just said, I didn't have much use for it. I didn't say I didn't know how to use one. I just didn't have much use. Something. Who knows? Close enough. At any rate, so let's get on to our gun for the day. And this is what I got. I'm going to show you this first. This is a fairly inexpensive, or it used to be. Now they've raised the price. They're like almost $90 now. A Galco shoulder rig. They're cheapo suede leather shoulder rig, which is, it's not too bad. It depends the kind of clothing you're wearing. The holster will stay open, so you can reholster fairly easily, but if you got heavy clothing on, it collapses easy too. So, But the reason I'm showing you this is made for a Glock 19. And don't hold me to this, you're on your own. I take no responsibility for anything. Which is true. I've made that a motto in my life, not to take any responsibility for anything. Other people's problems or my own. But this holster for a Glock 19 I found, because it's really hard to find a holster for this gun. So much so I bought myself a mold and I've made my own holsters for this gun. But I found this works, just by chance, because I had this for a Glock 19. And I thought, I wonder if that would work. And it's a little tight, so what I did is the old trick. You wrap your firearm in saran wrap, and you dunk the holster in water and shove it in there. No, I didn't. But the same thing. I wrap the gun in saran wrap, and you do that, because especially this gun, because it's got this Picatinny rail on it that's kind of pointy on the front. And you want to cover that stuff up enough so it'll slide and not be digging this leather up pieces. So you wrap the gun in saran wrap and you tuck it in there, and it was a little too tight, so I let it sit in. I pushed it in as far as I could without pushing it too much. I let it sit overnight, and it stretched it a little, and then I pushed it a little more, and by the end of about 3 days, I had this gun, this beautiful Kel Tec PMR30. I had that baby in the holster, snapped, and it's a perfect fit. At least it worked for me. Don't know if every one of these holsters comes just alike. Don't know that. Maybe I got the wrong holster and it's not for a Glock 19. I don't know. So, you're on your own. But it worked for me, and I'm really glad it did, because this is like the ultimate 30 rounds in that magazine, 30 rounds in this magazine, if you fully load it, which we'll go into that later, and still about the weight of a squirt gun, unloaded. And with this light suede shoulder rig, you really don't even know you have this thing on. It really is, it's kind of an overpriced rig, because you could literally buy the best one made in the world for $150. And nowadays they're getting $90 for this, so it's kind of overpriced. But Andy Artunian doesn't make one for a PMR30, so you're kind of, and you can't buy one that he makes for a Glock 19 because it's so finely molded exactly to that gun. It will never work. But all this is just kind of a pocket for a Glock 19, so you can stretch it out. It's just suede. It'll stretch out and work for you. And I found this to be a really nice setup I got here. Thought I'd share that with you. So, we'll put him away. We'll talk about the gun. This is the platinum version. Apparently they Cerakote them in different colors just to get people to collect them. There are nuts out there that might even have like 3 or 4 of these things in different colors just to get the different colors, I guess. I don't know. I happen to like this gun. That's why I've got 4 of them. And, of course, they're in different colors. Which they actually aren't. I've got a duplication of one color, and it's driving me insane. It's like this thing, and it doesn't look right. They should all be different colors, don't you think? I don't know. At any rate, it's got one of these communist European heel butt mag releases on it, and it actually works fairly well because you're not really going to be doing tactical reload. You could do tactical reload excellent with these, but you're not really going to be dumping your mags on the ground because it's really not a self-defense gun. It's really more of a plinker and maybe a varmint hunting gun. But it's really more of a plinker have fun with gun. But you could make the argument you could use it for self-defense. You got 30 rounds in the magazine of 22 Magnum. Theoretically, that probably would get you out of something. So at any rate, I was going to grab some ammunition for it, because that's how you have a good program, is you have a high-powered Magnum weapon, ammunition, and a bottle of rye. That's what gets things going. No, I got this ammunition out because this ammunition is Gold Dot. I'll read the label to you. Gold Dot, short barrel, personal protection ammunition made specifically for, I would say the only thing that it is made for is the NAA little pocket revolvers. In my case, a Black Widow. Is it called the Black Widow? Yeah, I think so. The Black Widow. Isn't it called Black Widow? Whatever, chime in if I'm wrong. The little 5-shot single action, beautifully made stainless steel revolver by NAA, North American Arms. North American Arms. There you go. See. And the reason I got this out, because it's a hollow point 40 grain bullet, and in theory this should expand even though it comes from a 2-inch barrel, which means, you see, I have found that in a 22 long rifle, the ones I like the best are the mini mags. Who doesn't like the mini mags, right? Well, they make the 40 grain solid bullet, or they make a 36 grain hollow point, and I have found that the 36 grain hollow point expands great when it comes out of a rifle, but out of a handgun it doesn't expand. So I always buy the 40 grain, not the hollow point, to use in the little, like the LCR that I like so much, that little 8-shot LCR. Or even the one I showed last time, the single 10. Because it doesn't build enough pressure going out that short barrel for that thing to ever expand. So the 30, but nowadays you buy whatever 22 you can find, right? So it's kind of meaningless. But I've always bought the 40 without the hollow point, because unless you're running through a rifle, it won't expand. But these are hollow point. Apparently these will expand even coming out of a little 2-inch barrel. And it says right here on the back, optimized for a 2-inch barrel. May not function in all semi-automatics. I don't even know what semi-automatic 22 Magnum there would be out there with a 2-inch barrel. I kind of implied, but yeah. So optimized for a 2-inch barrel. So if you run this through the LCR, which I have one of those in 22 Magnum, run through that, that's still not a 2-inch barrel, is it? I think that's 1 7/8. I think the Smith & Wesson J-frames are 1 7/8, but they probably make a 3-inch barrel. So the only 2-inch barrel I can think of it could be optimized for would be a Black Widow with 2-inch barrel. But I'm not even sure if that's a 2-inch barrel now. That may be bigger than a 2-inch barrel. I'll have to check on that and see. I don't know who they're optimizing this for. That's the question. But I'm curious if this would function in my PMR30 or not. Just, it's the kind of thing that somebody down in Kentucky would do some redneck science on and shoot it into a beer and tell me repeatedly. Because if you don't shoot more than one, you really don't know if it functions. I have a hard time getting a gun that doesn't have more than one use, but this, well, you could theoretically carry it around and shoot woodchuck with it. Would be great, and it's awful fun to shoot at the range. So, but being an old guy, these sights really work for me, because the red fiber optic on the back and the green fiber optic on the front really give you a nice daylight sight. bright. And the other thing that works for me being an old guy is, see the front sight here, it is narrower than the width on the back. So you actually, when you sight it in, you actually have, again, as much space split in half on either side of the front sight in the rear sights, if you understand what I'm saying. You get that daylight between on the front. Very, very, very accurate gun, believe it or not. At least it is for me. And that's one of the reasons I like them so much. And I have had zero issues with these things, other than if I think if you've watched my video on this, I talk about there's a buffer pad, little buffer pad on these things, and I talk about having, when I cleaned it on, I always clean on newspaper when I clean the guns, and I put it all back together and left the buffer pad on the newspaper. The first thing I do with the newspaper once I get done cleaning is I crumple them into a ball and throw them in the fireplace. Yeah. Any rate, just a fun gun, and I've had no problems with it. And apparently, Nothing Fancy doesn't like these magazines going through the carbine deal, which I don't know why they'd function differently, the magazines would with a carbine. And I questioned that when he said it, and then I watched his video the other day where he's in the Kel Tec booth, and they were talking to him and saying to him, well, you know, we've changed those magazines a lot over the years. The ones that came out in the first PMR30s are nothing like the ones in the current. And you could hear his bicycle going backwards because he started saying, oh, well, yeah, you know, most of those magazines I was using were from that original PMR30 I had years ago. And there you have it, you know. That's why you got to be really careful when you dish a product because it doesn't work. You better make sure it's the current product in your hands and not, in this case, apparently, magazines that were 10 years old, or whenever the gun first came out, and which they've totally changed the material that they make the magazines out of since then, and they've thickened or stiffened the sides of them, apparently. So I would like to get one of those guns, but I've never seen one, which is interesting since that gun shop that I did my little VR to Machine Gun Kelly the other day. That's where I've got this. They carry a lot of these. Matter of fact, they had like 4 of those shotguns there the other day, and they had a couple of those sub 16, you know, the little 223 things where the front forearm pops down into a bipod, and which is the only thing I really don't like about the gun is that. But they don't have any. They've never had any of those other ones. So I thought I'd share this with you today. And even if you don't like the gun, if you're familiar with single action semi-automatics of this nature, and with those sights on it, you'll be able to shoot it accurately. Bang, bang, bang. I didn't say I didn't know how to use one. I just said I never had a use for one. You could use that lot. Fantastic gun as far as I'm concerned. You know, it gets mixed reviews like a lot of the Kel Tec products do, but once again, I think Kel Tec products, a lot like lesser expensive firearms, end up being very attractive to people that don't have a lot of experience with firearms. And I think that's part of the problem with lesser expensive firearms is that people, of course, then also that lesser expensive firearms, they tend to use really bad ammunition, cheap ammunition. And so they go through the worst beating they could possibly go through also. But I think that's one of the things with unique firearms like this, very creative, very innovative, that people that don't have a lot of experience with firearms are attracted to these, just like they're attracted to, say, a Taurus. Although, you know, a lot of the Taurus problems are justifiably being complained about. They are real and do exist. Because I've heard too many stories, and too many dealers have told me about the problems they've had, and beyond the problems they've had, how long it takes to ever get them back, and they come back and they're not fixed. So, not bashing Taurus, I'm telling you what I've heard over the years. I have not had too many experiences with Taurus that were negative, but I've had very few, drop that guy, very few experiences with them, period. So I've only owned maybe half a dozen in my lifetime, so you can't come up with any real consensus about anything, especially when none of them were bad and went back. But I've only had half a dozen, so I can't really tell you one way or the other there. Past judgment. So, well, there we go, guys. Now it's 31 minutes of your life you'll never get back again. Oh, we ran a little long today, didn't we? I'm sorry. But oh man, that's good stuff. See, that's the problem, is I like Sazerac Rye, so we just ran a little long because of that. Because otherwise I stop and I can't drink anymore. So, thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for subscribing. I really appreciate it. Until next time, like I always say, go out and stay safe.